Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special series that we're running here at PMTT. I am joined with Waley, one of the team captains of the Australian Warmachine teams going over to the WTC. As part of our sponsorship with the teams, I managed to wrangle all three people, one from each team, and force them to be interviewed by me. And Waley drew the short straw on his team. Coming up after this one, I've also got one with Josh and one with Dan. So, but let's get into why I'm doing these interviews. These guys represent the absolute top players in Australia for Warmachine, their chosen hobby, and I want to know what makes them tick. So I've been to a couple of WTCs previously. I was not kind of on the top team at the time. I was more there for moral support and a drinking buddy. But it was an absolutely fantastic experience. So I would definitely want to pick these guys' brains about why they keep going back. So let's start this interview off after Waley's just been sitting there politely for almost a full minute now, listening to me talk about him. How you going tonight, man?
I'm going very well. Thank you, Henry, for the chance to talk and do this interview, mate. And a little about myself. I've been playing Warmachine and Hordes since 2010, so coming up obviously 12 years. Before that, I played a lot of Games Workshop and still have a Age of Sigmar army. I, s- I suppose gaming in one form or another has been in my life for a very long period of time. I started with Magic the Gathering when I was 14, and just I've got a circle of friends down here in Hobart, Tassie, that we always do some kind of game. Doesn't matter if it's a board game, doesn't matter if it's a miniatures game. And this journey, I suppose, has kind of been with them. So we all started to play Games Workshop, and then we obviously progressed on to different games. So as what Henry was saying, obviously fortunate enough, I've gone. This will be my fifth WTC coming up, and we were very lucky to win in 2018, which was an amazing experience. So yeah, that's a little about myself, and things are going well, and obviously getting excited for one that the next one coming up next month.
Excellent, excellent, and like it's going to be an absolutely fantastic experience for you guys. I know going over and attending the previous ones that I have been, that I had attended previously, they are definitely some of the highlights of my kind of gaming career, if you could call it that. But it's not the game; it was the camaraderie and the friendships that we forged over there. Like like I wouldn't know you at all without this game. And
Absolutely,
yeah,
it's a huge part talking about it, and so already it's we obviously see Facebook memories that come up, but then you obviously start reaching out to some of your friends, and like you were saying, I've made lifelong friends through the hobby in all parts of the world. Meeting them through War Machine and those experiences, and it's just a blast to not only your fellow teammates in the Australian teams who we obviously travel with and we share wonderful experiences with. We go and see different countries and do a bit of touristy stuff, but also just hang out and have fun and then play War Machine, and then the other teams that you play against, and those memories you forge from those close games, and also the events that happen, and again the socializing and team bonding, and the general stuff that comes with it is certainly creates some very fond memories, which I'll obviously keep with me. Uh, you know, so yeah, it's a great experience, and just excited to be able to have the opportunity to go back and do it again. Obviously, COVID threw a bit of a spanner in the works, so it's been ironically we're talking 4 years since we won it, and that time just flies. Yeah, so yeah, pretty excited to get back there.
yeah, yeah. So the WTC is probably the peak for a lot of people in where they get to with their gaming. And as a former winner of it, you have obviously scaled that peak. But how did you get into the hobby originally? What drew you to tabletop gaming?
It's as I kind of alluded to before. I had some good buddies of ours. We all played Magic. We enjoyed Magic, and obviously we were young kids or teenagers then. And then one of the group looked at, but it was Warhammer Fantasy back in the day, and so we all just kind of drifted to moving away from Magic to play the tabletop miniatures game. Um, and we played that for some time, and just very much enjoyed that. Um, we kind of shifted between Warhammer Fantasy and Warhammer 40k. Um,
Yep. Yep.
and then through, I think it was just probably curiosity and maybe slight little disgruntled with Games Workshop back in the day, back in about 2009, um, which I'm sure a lot of people have similar kind of stories.
Yep.
One of our gaming group, he was captivated by it was the Mark II Kador, the Kador artwork for their army book, and he
Yeah.
saw it and
Okay.
he was just captivated by it, and so he actually went in and did some research and bought the rule book, did some research online, and kind of introduced this game to us, and yeah, we obviously to start with there was only a group of four of us, but we obviously all went in there and picked an army, and like all of us do, when you get into a new hobby or a new thing, it's pretty exciting. You
Mm.
pick your army and start playing battles, and and yeah, for us, as I said, that was that transition. But um, aside from anything like any company or game specific, I think that's just my part of my circle of friends. Our connections obviously gaming, so we really enjoy gaming. I think I just really love the social side, but also the part of the strategy and a little bit of the old it's your downtime, your free time, bit of
Mm.
so it's your way to get lost in a game, concentrating, having fun, and that kind of stuff. So that's I think for me is it doesn't matter what format. Um, I'll always be doing some gaming of some description, because as I said, I just really enjoy um, the experience of playing a game or thinking about a game, or and even it could just be a beer and pretzels game, like a more casual board game. To obviously been pretty fortunate enough to play Warmachine at a pretty top competitive level for not that entire 12 years, but I'd say approximately at least probably the last 8 years. Um, and just enjoying those experiences, and yeah, so that's probably one of the biggest reasons why I got into the hobby.
Yeah, no, that's great, and you've definitely been a top competitor the whole time I've known you. I think we first met back in, I want to say 2014, 2015. We played in a tournament down in Melbourne, I think it was.
Yep.
So,
So yeah, so it was interesting. I played just in Hobart, and then I was fortunate with my brother living in the US, and I actually got over for a couple of trips to the US, and played some competitive War Machine there, and talk about making lifelong friends and whatnot. Um, some pretty influential people in the game back then. Was involved in a few podcasts with some of the people back then just as a guest, and yeah, kind of just took that experience to help me, and then kind of made a big splash onto the Australian scene back in 2014, and then yeah, kind of played pretty heavily in competitive. Then I was lucky for 2015 was my first WTC that I was lucky enough to be selected for, and yeah, never look back. The rest is history. So
yeah, yeah, and that's a great way to do it. You know what you like, you've got the game that scratches that itch, and you can just keep riding it. You've got tons of mates, you've made lifelong friends with it. It sounds like there's kind of no downside to this hobby apart from the biggest one, which is the time and the money sink.
to be fair, but without going on a very big tangent, I think this day and age, entertainment always costs money. Doesn't matter what you do, even if you're going down to the pub, having a beer, or going to a footy game, or going to the movies, or whatever you're doing. So yes, I mean the money is one thing, but I mean I'm sure there's could be worse things I could be spending money on, and nothing will ever replace in terms of the memories and the fun times that you've had, and just the community building, and the sense of achievement from even as a local scene, about catching up with your buddies and us. We still play on a Monday night. You go to the go to Gamster on Monday night, and even if there's only two of you, or sometimes at its peak, we would have 10 of us coming down to play, obviously down in Hobart, and yeah, even just the stories of like the road trips, and I know you've obviously done a few yourself. You think about for us obviously the big events in Australia, getting down to Canberra, but for you driving into Brisbane, for me driving to Launceston or Devonport and Hobart, and just organising a bit of a road trip with your mates, and staying in a staying in an Airbnb or staying in a hostel or staying in a hotel or, and going out for dinner and having a few beers and having a laugh and all that kind of stuff. So, I think, yes, it all is a cost, but it's just part of that. I mean, to me, that part of it is just as important as actually, sorry, well, not important, wrong word, but just as enjoyable,
Mm.
just as rewarding as the actual playing the game, and regardless of the results. And I've been fortunate enough and lucky enough to obviously to win a couple of big tournaments and been involved in a couple of big things, and obviously pretty close on a few others, but obviously you can't win them all, but it's all been a great experience. So
Yeah, and that's it. It's like you said, entertainment of any kind costs money. This is just what we've chosen to do, and
absolutely.
like with all the memories that I've made with all my friends over the years, I wouldn't trade it for anything. 100% wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, and I think it's in terms of, I think it's good mental exercise too. I seriously think that in terms of, the strategic element and thinking about things and just help, call it, brain exercise or whatever you want it to. But
Mm.
I still really think that's an important part as well in terms of, going through that process. And for me personally, I still really enjoy that process. And we'll talk a little bit more later in this interview about some of those other elements of tournaments and things. But I think it's all exciting part of the hobby.
Yeah, yeah. So you've done a pretty good job so far of selling someone new getting into the hobby. But what about someone who's come into the hobby, they've got their army, and they've heard there's a local tournament happening? Like, what's the advice or what tips do you have for someone who's just preparing to go to their first tournament?
So it's I can talk from the heart here. I remember, so as I said, I started in 2010. We were playing the game with a group of us, and then we knew it was about 4 months out. It got announced that there was going to be, I think it was three or 4 months out, that there was going to be a state tournament in Tasmania up in Launceston, which is a couple of hours north of where Hobart is, in the next biggest city in Tassie, and and we understood the format. So this obviously, this is I'm talking specifically about Warmachine, but this principle can be applied to any hobby. But we understood what the format was in terms of how the in a Warmachine term it's going to be time turn. So generally, when we were playing and when we first started to play, um, like all things, when you're learning, you're not playing on a clock. If a particular game system has some kind of timing element. Um, so once we worked out what I suppose for a better term, what the conditions were going to be in
Mm.
terms of time turns, and what the format was going to be like in terms of what the scenarios were, we started to, for a better term, we started to train ourselves by playing under those conditions. And I think that's very good advice for anyone thinking about a tournament to understand. Get the scenario pack or what the tournament pack's going to be, and in your practice games, with your buddies, is just to play under those same conditions.
Mm.
And that certainly helped prepare me for my first ever tournament. And because I know when we first started, it was hilarious. You would be going through your thought process, thinking about how you're going to start your turn, moving some of your models, starting rolling dice, and then in that 10-minute time format, you heard a little timer on the side, and it'd beep, and honestly, the first couple of games, you'd be like, "Hang on, but I haven't done anything." Like half my army hadn't activated, and so it was just something that you needed. Well, sorry, you became used to, and it was more so from the approach of the actual turn, and in terms of lamenting how long you're going to make a decision. You were obviously making these decisions, and then over that 3 or 4 months, it just became quicker and became second nature,
Mm.
and it definitely helped. And also too, um, I think playing with your local guys in your community and practicing for tournaments. I think another very good strategy, or sorry, a very good process is to go through that like post game
Mm.
analysis, but have an honest post game analysis where you can talk to someone, and that's what I think you get good learnings from that, and then that's, I think, helps you, giving you some relevant information, but also helps you get a better understanding of what your army does, or what your army's good at, or what deficiencies it has, but also as a player too, because it's put the two elements together. Like, okay, I've got to make a decision. I can't, I've got to make a decision quickly. I make that decision. Is it the right decision? Is it the wrong decision? And learn from it. And so
Mm.
definitely the learnings from each game. Some people, uh, and I'm not going to lie, I used to do it a little bit too. You play a game, regardless of the result, you do a bit of a wipe. And what I mean by that is, you might not take time to kind of reflect. And I used to, when we were playing very early on too, we'd either play on a Friday or a Saturday night, catching up with some friends. And then I used to love what I used to call like the post-game discussion, because they were good friends of mine, as I said, that
Mm,
I'd been kind of grew up together. Sometimes you'd be on the phone for a good hour, the next day, you'd think about the game, and then you'd ring them the next day and be like, oh, I thought I did really well when this happened, and I
mm,
thought this was the turning point in the game, and those kind of things. Now, obviously, for me, because it's my mates and it's a way of socialising and spending time, um, but it also, I think, just helped me become a bit better at the game, because
mm,
you were kind of developing, and you were working together too in a kind of it's because we all were advantaged. We all kind of started the game together. We're all new,
mm.
so. Like it wasn't a situation we're all learning together, learning the system, learning the game, and then obviously learning our armies, and then developing tournament strategies and things like that. So I think we were probably blessed in that regard. But it's all important information, I think, for people learning about the game, learning about tournaments, and obviously wanting to get better, and doing that work. Or, I mean, people can say work, but investing that time, I suppose, it's
Mm.
probably a good way of saying investing that time, and it's rewarding, in my opinion, and you'll start to get those results, because I think you'll start to learn the game, understand the game a bit better. And then hopefully the results in terms of attending tournaments, will start to reflect that.
Yeah, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I know one of my kind of fondest memories was at the 2018 WTC. I think you were playing Jack as at like a practice game in the week beforehand, and basically every other player was just sitting there just out of earshot discussing how the game was going and talking through what they think's going to happen versus what's happening, but it had like 15 people all just kind of crowded around a table, just all engrossed in this. And I got like, I can't remember the game at all, but I can remember sitting down with all those guys, having a drink, and kind of discussing the pros and cons of every single little move that both of you guys made.
Yep,
And
yep.
just kind of like, you discuss it, and then you look over and it's like, Whaley's done this. And then that would spur on the next bit of conversation, and then look back, oh, Jack's done this now. So, and then it was absolutely fantastic. But that's 100% what I think you need to do if you really want to get better and push for those tournament results, is go through your games, look at the mistakes you're making, figure out what you can do better next time. I always say to people, no one is going to make fun of you for making a mistake, provided you only make it once.
And I think also, if you're blessed enough to have experienced people um, in the community, is to be able to learn from, play games against them,
Mm,
and learn from them, and be able to hopefully have those conversations with them, and they can share some of their experiences about, because as we all know, we all got to start somewhere. So,
yeah.
to be able to do that, and exactly what you've described. And look, I've been on both sides of the coin, as in watching big games and thinking about, because again, I don't know what it is. Um, you know, I my professional career is in IT, so I'm not a psychologist or anything like that. But it's just that element of, you got two people that are obviously making decisions, and it's just interesting to see, if I put a model forward, and your response is, are you going to come and attack it? Are you going to, and are you going to, what's your mental mindset, or what's your approach to the game, and what is your plan? And then either when you're playing it, or when you're spectating it, and then you're trying to work out what the other person's kind of doing too. And that's, I think, is really, for me, really attractive part of the hobby, because you get different people, they're going to have different thought processes, and it's not just a repetitive game.
Mm,
Different circumstances happen all the time, and it's, a little bit of like, trying to think of your opponent, or think of what your opponent's thinking, and try to second guess them, or put them in a tight situation where you think, that they're not going to be able to solve this puzzle, or if you're in a situation where you can solve their puzzle to win the game. And sometimes you're successful, sometimes you're not. But when you are, you can walk away and be a little proud and go, yeah, cool. I kind of worked my way through that, and as we know, we're playing miniatures games that generally involve dice, so there's obviously a bit of luck involved there. And sometimes things go your way, sometimes they don't. But that's all part of it. And I think, again, that's just all what's exciting from my personal point of view, about different elements that are attractive towards miniature wargaming, and I think they apply to all sorts of different games too. It's not just, there's elements that exist everywhere through those different games.
Yeah, yeah, and that's it. It's a case of like doing well at miniature wargaming. That's great. It's your hobby. Everyone loves it when they win. But there's a lot of things that you can take away into the wider world that you can hone and get better at in your hobby. When I was younger, I was very socially awkward. But if you go to a tournament, you're gonna over the course of a weekend, you're gonna spend 2 hours with 5 different people. There's no way to get around that. You're gonna spend that
That's
time. You're
right.
gonna interact with
That's
them.
right.
You're gonna get better at dealing with people and talking with people and meeting people from all different backgrounds, all different types of people. Like there's like you and me are a little bit the same. We've both got a bit of a background in IT.
Hmm.
But I know tradies, I know doctors, I know chefs, I know students. All these people that I met in the hobby.
Correct. Yeah, exactly right. It brings all different types. And then, as we kind of touched on too, in terms of, that just might be in your local community, and then if you go interstate or overseas and you play different tournaments, then you'll get different cultures and different perspectives on all sorts of different things that I think is just, really really nice. And those experiences to be able to share those times with those people, and obviously there's the game element, but there's a social element too, which is nice
Mm,
as well. So.
yeah, yeah, and it's something that it's such an easy experience to go and meet new people with as well. I know every time I've gone overseas for a holiday, wherever I go, whatever the holiday is for, whether it's just going away for a bit of time or it's going over to visit family and friends or going over for a wedding or something like that, I always end up finding a local game store and then messaging people on their forums or on Facebook saying, "Hey, I'm a guy from Australia that's over for the week. What night do you guys play? And can I borrow an army? I'm keen to come down and have a game." So I've played all over the world, which is fantastic, and I've met people from completely different backgrounds that I never would have
Absolutely.
met. And
And that common thing, whatever game it is, that game that
mm,
that brings you together, and that's right. You can have those conversations with those people, and they can explain, and share those experiences about their community and how, because we all do things differently too.
mm,
And as you said, just that experience, I think, is just enriching to be able to do that. And yeah, and it's a heap of fun. That's obviously one of the biggest things to say, and that's why I like the game and the hobby, because it's a lot of fun.
yeah,
So that's why
yeah.
we do it.
So that I've played all overseas on random holidays against random peoples with random armies that most of them I've never used before. But going overseas for a tournament is kind of a different scenario. You've travelled quite a lot overseas for tournaments. What is your experience with that? What would you recommend for people who are interested in going overseas for a tournament?
I think in terms of the competitive, just to break it down, if it's, and I'll answer the first part very quickly in terms of if it's just social, then I think the most important thing about that obviously is just to enjoy that's what your aim and objective is. So, make sure that you're over there having fun, enjoying the experience, don't lose sight of what you're trying to do in terms of, you know, because you're going over there for a social time. But if you're more competitively minded, some advice would be leading up to it when you're traveling. I would be trying to get consistent gameplay with your particular list and your particular armies. Um, it's definitely a benefit to you too if you know your army and your rules very well. And Obviously, the main competitive game that I play is obviously Warmachine. So I would be also doing a little bit of research in trying to understand what the current metas are, what the current competitions are, and have some be familiar with some of those counters to your particular army and how things can play and what you can do to mitigate them. So some systems might be able to take two lists. Some systems, depending on what game you're playing, obviously taking particular models to give you um, some particular advantages against things that people will be playing against you. So kind of knowing your army very well, but also knowing the meta and knowing kind of what your stiff competition is going to be is um, definitely some good advice for anyone planning to travel overseas, um, who want to be a bit more competitive in terms of those tournaments. And then I suppose the final thing would be is to obviously in terms of your travel plans, and I think this is very important in terms of you want to be stress free. So try
Mm.
to get your travel plans so you kind of travel over there, get some time to settle in, depending on where you're going overseas. Um, I wouldn't be advising if you could, flying over there and then the next day you're getting straight into the tournament. I'd be there getting a couple of days just to get over some jet lag and acclimatise to where you are. And also, I mean, just me personally, is that I've never ever just flown anywhere purely just for the sake of playing a tournament. It's obviously been, as you said, a bit of a holiday, or at least,
Mm.
taking in some cultures and sites and tourist kind of things. So, thinking about that trip as well and incorporating that, I think is also good. And it's also part of the experience too, because I don't think, and this is probably my final point, is you don't want to put too much pressure on yourself. You don't want to get in your own head about, I've spent all this money, come all this way just to play in this tournament. And, if I don't go well, I'll be a failure. I don't believe any of that kind of stuff. I've had plenty of tournaments where I've won and I've had plenty of tournaments where I've lost the first round. But I mean, uh, you know, that sometimes happen, luck in your way and all the rest of it. But, try to enjoy the experience. Yeah, try not to get in your own head and put too much pressure on yourself, because I think that will affect your performance. And yeah, as I said before, and I'll probably a running theme is to go and enjoy it. So have some fun when you're over there.
Yeah, yeah, and that's it. When it comes down to it, it's a hobby that you're playing because you enjoy it. If you don't enjoy the experience, then you it's one of the only ways to do the hobby wrong.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, so you did touch a bit on the meta and looking into kind of the meta of where you're going, or if it's a like an international tournament like the WTC, understanding the kind of the worldwide meta. And we do go into that in a bit more detail in the next episode of this series with Josh. Um, but we'll keep pushing ahead with Waley because we can got plenty more that we want to talk about. So overseas tournaments, like being relaxed, just taking it easy, going there with kind of some expectations on yourself that you don't have to win it. You're just there to have fun. You're there to meet people. You're there to play some awesome games. What are you thinking about the upcoming WTC?
Well, we touched on it before, but I'm very, very keen to catch up with some friends that I made, and because of COVID and we hadn't been there for 4 years, it's going to be great just to be able to hang out and see some of these guys from majority of Europe, but also from the US as well. I was lucky enough to recently go back to the US this year, but that was just for family. I didn't play any Warmachine, so it'll be good to see some of my Warmachine buddies that I've made from the US that's traveling in the US teams, which will be fun. Um, and For us, yeah, I think we we're quite lucky in our team. We've obviously, of the five of us going in our team, four of us have won previously WTC, and one of us, Chris, has won it twice. So, which is obviously a pretty amazing event. And got to practice what I preach. We're not putting any pressure on ourselves. Obviously, we're going to give it the best shot we can. And if
Hmm.
we're fortunate enough to win, that'll be amazing. If we don't win, then like all of us, we'll deal with that little bit of disappointment. But that won't be our defining moment about the trip. I think the defining moment about the trip will just be traveling together, seeing our friends, enjoying our time together, being overseas. Yeah, so our team, we've got a couple of days in Germany, which we're really looking forward to, and then we're going to go to Belgium and Brussels, which we did in 2017. So we'll get to see that, and then post trip we're going to Spain, we're going to Barcelona for a few days. So there's lots of things to be excited about, and that aren't War Machine related, so to speak. But also too, I'm really looking forward for myself personally is to um, put myself out there in that competitive stage, in that world stage, and challenge myself.
Hmm.
So I've no, it's obviously we've been doing a lot of work, which has been great. A lot of preparation, and thankfully because of War Table and other bits and pieces, we've still been playing a lot of games, even during the pandemic, and we had our camp yeah, back at the start of August, which was great, and just catching up with guys at the OTC earlier in the year, and then most of us went down to Melbourne as well for the Melbourne tournament that was also in late August, so that was great. So it, just those events, seeing people in person, was just kind of building for us the excitement about being able to travel again, travel overseas, um, and catch up and see everyone. And I think we're feeling when I say confident, as in I think we're going to be. I think we're going to do a very good reputation of ourselves, all three teams for Australia. And I think that's probably, if there's only one thing that, obviously we want to hold our head proud in terms of, it's not about, winning everything or win at all costs, but we certainly want to do a good representation of being able to play Warmachine representing Australia in the upcoming WTC. So I know that myself and my fellow teammates are definitely excited to be able to have that opportunity.
Excellent, excellent. Well, it sounds like you're really excited for it. The next question that we have on our list here, I feel like you've already answered a little bit. Um, when it comes down to what keeps you in this hobby, what keeps you coming back for more games, and
Yeah, exactly right. As I've said, and it's just it's part of that. I think for me, it's the way that I socialise with a close group of friends in Hobart, but then at a greater scheme, it's obviously a lot of my friendships through War Machine, but those greater communities all across Australia. So, uh, that's from a personal sense, but also too, as I said, I enjoy the game. I enjoy playing and enjoy thinking about the approach to the game. War Machine is there's a lot of different options in terms of building your armies and whatnot, and even in a social sense, I just enjoy. Um, well, number one, actually, I also enjoy collecting the models. So, collecting your figurines and appreciating your figurines and then using those models, those different armies, testing different things that might be not as competitive, but you want to test yourself. And yes, I want to build this list and see how it goes, or this has got some really fun interactions that I want to play. And the other really big part is still being a member of the community. And so, particularly in Hobart, we go to the game shop and there's guys that play Infinity. That they used to play War Machine, they moved on to Infinity. There's guys that play Games Workshop games, but we all still go in there and we can still chat and communicate and socialise, ask how each other are doing, and not that I know how to play those games, but I take interest in looking at things and appreciating what people have done and the games that I play. And it's part of that community. It doesn't matter if you have to be playing the exact same game, but it's always good to catch up with people and, you know, um, particularly in the game shop and have a chat. And I think I alluded to it too, during that 2, 3, or 4 hour period, I'm not really thinking about anything else. I've been quite fortunate. I'm not at all suggesting that I've got a tough or stressful life, but it's certainly good to kind of get lost in the fantasy of the hobby, or
mm,
the fluff of your game, or the strategy of what happened, or how funny this event was because someone needed to roll sixes, or someone needed to roll something in order for them to win the game, and they were able to roll it, and that was a bit of a funny moment, and
mm,
share those experiences.
yeah, yeah, I yeah, you hit the nail on the head with that. It's the community that a lot of people it's coming back to is it's people's friends, it's the community, it's even people that you don't know that well that are regulars at the local game shop. Like, and you said it perfectly. Even though you don't play those games, you still understand the basic gameplay mechanics of a lot of things because they're very similar. So you can kind of understand of what's happening. But also painting. Painting goes across all games.
Mm,
Unless you're playing a game with pre-painted models, everyone paints their miniatures. You can appreciate. It doesn't matter what the miniature is from. If it's a G Dub, if it's Infinity, if it's War Machine, if it's Malifaux, if it's Conquest, if it's Star Wars. I could go on and on and on. You can always appreciate someone's painting. Um,
absolutely, and the work they've done to it, and how it looks on the table, and I used to very fondly enjoy, um, when I say downtime, things in where at CanCons, where you'd walk around to the different buildings and see the different games, and
mm,
just enjoy and appreciate them playing their game. And they're just as passionate as I'm about about playing my game. And you just see and for me, being a fan of Star Wars, and well, obviously just being a fan of miniature wargaming and hobbies in general, you can just walk around and go, wow, that game was kind of cool. And
mm,
just talk to people, how you going, and like, how's your tournament going. And yeah, again, it's part of that, that social interaction and sharing those experiences. And it could be some guy you'd never met who plays a completely different board game, but you can stop for, a couple of minutes, either if if they've come to see your game, or you're standing in line getting some to eat for lunch, or you walk up and have a chat with them, and it's just nice. It's just good. So
mm. Yeah, yeah. No, it's a fantastic hobby. I love it. It sounds like you love it. Um,
absolutely.
but So you've been in the hobby for quite a while. If you had one tip that you could tell everyone in the hobby, or one bit of advice for any person on Earth who is playing tabletop wargaming, what would it be?
Well, I got two. If I can double down, I got two. One,
Okay.
I'm just kind of repeating what I've said before, but I think these are very important. Number one important tip is to have fun, because that's what it's about. It's about enjoying. It's about we do it for our entertainment. If you're not enjoying it, if then maybe it's. I wouldn't suggest walking away, but I'd suggest maybe reevaluating and thinking about why is this not enjoyable, and maybe your approach, or maybe it could be someone you're playing with, or whatever your circumstances in. It should be fun, it should be enjoyable, and it should give you enjoyment to be able to play the hobby. And the second one, bit of advice for people in the hobby, is to also try to be mindful and be mindful of the community and the people that you're playing with, and kind of ties into the first one as well about being fun for them as well, because a majority of these things, not all, because there are some games, and if you're into the hobby for painting, but a majority of the actual playing requires two people or a community to play. So I'd be very mindful of that. So, um, just thinking about people in the community, thinking about trying to be inclusive, um, you know, trying to help people get into the community, grow the community. You don't have to be doing anything out of the ordinary, but just working collectively as a group for in your game store, thinking about trying to work with your game store, or people that come to the game store, be nice, friendly, and that kind of stuff to help the community, because all that effort and time investing into that all pays with reward, because not everyone who watches a game is going to be then enticed to play. But when you're open and friendly and nice and inclusive to people, and try to be welcoming for people, then you'll be able to grow your community, which in turn will then be able to grow those experiences not only for yourself but your community members. And it's certainly a great way to continue the hobby in your local area, and also gives you the opportunity to potentially branch out into different games, you know, different experiences, um, and it's a bit hard to do that all by yourself. So that'd be my second tip.
Yeah, no, two great pieces of advice there. I can definitely reinforce the second one. Doesn't matter if you found a game with the greatest rule systems on Earth. If you're the only one that's going to play it, it's going to be a pretty boring game. Um, but yeah, and that's it. The more people you can get playing and participating in whatever hobby, and this works for all hobbies. The more people, the more fun is pretty much. There's very few hobbies that doesn't apply to. So I can definitely, once again, 100% agree with Waley. It works out better for everyone if it's a nice, safe, welcoming environment that people can enjoy, because you might have a stressful job, you might not have a stressful job, but being able to just go somewhere, just relax, veg out, and throw some dice with some mates is a fantastic thing to have. So I would absolutely love to keep picking Whaley's brain, um, but unfortunately I did agree to a rough time limit, only because I know that we could easily sit here for the rest of the night. And while Whaley doesn't say he doesn't have a stressful job, he does have a life outside the hobby, which I'm very conscious of. And I know if I let him, we would just sit and just talk all night. So
Absolutely, until someone knocks on that door behind me, and the little guy turns up and said it's time for me to read him a story and put him to bed. So
yeah, and I'll have my wife knocking at the door asking when I'm going to go upstairs and clean the dishwasher. Um, so we'll probably have to call it there. Thank you everyone for listening. We do have the next episode in this series is grading generals with Gigantor. It should be coming out a couple days after this is live, and that will be delving deeper into the matchup and the meta for the WTC. So thank you again for Waley for starting off this series, and thank you again for being such a good representative of Australia at the WTC.
pleasure, mate. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come on. I love talking about the hobby that we love, and I'm sure people can pick up. I'm quite passionate about it. And mate, thanks. We'll go over there next month and give it our best and have a heap of fun and see how we go. But mate, appreciate being on, and hopefully some of the things I've said, people can take something from and enjoy their hobbies and enjoy their games. And you never know, I might get the opportunity to meet some of these people in the future, which would be lovely.
Excellent. Well, guys, until next time, see ya.
Thanks, mate.